Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started, and we're doing fairly well that we're fairly close to starting on time. So you're very welcome to this session. Let me just take 30 seconds of your time just to remind you and explain to you the rules. And this is the fourth one I've moderated, and I'm getting more strict and stringent with my rules as I go along. Basically, what happens is, and why these panels are designed the way that they are, is that we have a keynote who is, in this case, Sylvia, who is an expert in the field, and she has been invited to speak for 15 minutes. Okay? Then what happens is that you have three further experts in the field who are given 4, maybe 5 if we're in a generous mood, around either replying, agreeing or disagreeing, and throwing in a little bit of their own research if they want to. Okay? Now, from there, if those guys have kept to the timetable, it's about 25 to 3. So that would give you 25 minutes for questions and to be involved. Yeah? The plan is that if you get given a microphone and you're going to ask a question, you are not allowed to spend 5 minutes talking before you ask your question. You actually have to ask the question in the first 20 words. That's the new rule. Okay? Otherwise, what happens is you get 3 people who get the opportunity to ask questions, and you've got 25 people that are sitting there that have these really wonderful questions that haven't asked them. Okay? So I'm going to be a little bit stricter this time. As an Australian, I can be fairly blunt, so I don't mean to be rude to anyone, but we're sticking to the rules for this one, and if you're going to ask a question, plan it. So, with that said, I'd like to introduce Sylvia Martinez. Now, in introducing Sylvia, I just want to say how lucky we are to have someone who can speak to this topic not only with authority, but with research. And I think that in many cases, as we talk about science and engineering and mathematics and technology, that we get experts, but not experts that have the breadth and experience that she does. So we're very lucky. So without further ado, and sticking to the time, please make welcome Sylvia.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you all for coming after the lovely lunch we've all had. And thank you to the organizers for inviting me. This is my first time here, and it's wonderful, I have to say. I'm going to be talking today about design, and design as a way of knowing. And just so you understand where I'm coming from, I've had a career in many different fields. My undergraduate degree was in electrical engineering, and I went into aerospace, where I worked as a scientist on the GPS satellite navigation system, back when it was just a theory. And now, I mean, I have it in my phone. It's crazy how something that didn't exist when I graduated from college now is a part of everyone's everyday life. And that's how I know that our kids are going to be solving problems that we don't even have the questions to ask yet. And yet the education we're giving them has to be there, has to be for them, even if we don't know the problems that they're going to tackle. Right now, I'm the president of Constructing Modern Knowledge, which is a publishing company and a professional development company, and I'm a principal advisor to the Stanford University Fab Learn Fellows, which is a group of educators all over the world who are at the cutting edge of using digital fabrication technologies in schools. And connecting that to research. As Tony said, I think it's extremely important that we validate what we say, and that we don't just say, oh, it's so good for the kids. We have to prove it. It's too important. There's too much at stake for us to just wave our hands and say, believe me, this is great. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book. I co-authored a book with Gary Stager. Some of you may have seen him this morning, called Invent to Learn, Tinkering and Engineering in the Classroom, to help teachers understand the impact of the maker movement, the impact that's changing the world, and in fact, changing the way we do business, we produce products, and will change in years to come, and help teachers understand how this is not something new in the classroom, but actually validates what we know about how kids learn. They learn by being deeply involved by projects that they care about. And now with these new tools and technology, we can make and invent new things. And so kids can be scientists and engineers today with these new tools and technology. So I'm going to talk about design. And I know that the description for this session said design thinking, but I think of design thinking as one aspect of a much bigger topic called design. And design to me is the process of making ideas real. It's making what happens in your head come into the world in various ways. And these new technologies of the maker movement put this power into our hands in a brand new way, and ways that we can use in real classrooms. Fabrication technologies like 3D printings and computer-controlled laser cutters are being used not just in the classroom, but in industry, in food technology, in building machines, in medicine, in consumer goods. All of these things are also being used in the classroom, and all of them have at the basis design. The printed part that comes out at the end isn't what's important. It's the process of thinking through what you want and making it happen with the computer-aided design tools, and then being able to make it and think about it and change it and fix it and make it better. So in schools all across the world, students are using these design tools and 3D printing parts for school projects to learn about wind and simple machines, to make things that they think are fun, to do art, to make the world a better place, like this cup that was designed by this girl for her grandfather who has Parkinson's, or to invent things that answer questions that no one has ever asked before, like, if an opposable thumb is so great, why don't we have two of them? If we had two of them, what could we do with them? Well, I'm going to build one and find out. So this is a student project where they built a working opposable thumb, and are experimenting with what you can do with that. Because the word prosthetics doesn't actually mean replacing parts that are missing. It actually means enhancing what it means to be a human. And that's a huge horizon on what's happening with medical technology, biotechnology, and 3D printing is enhancing human life. When you add computation and feedback and control to fabrication, you get things like this. Gloves that read sign language so that the computer says the words. A dress that's a pollution sensing gown that shows different patterns of light based on the sensors that are embedded in the dress. Ballet slippers that track dance movements. Now, all of these may not seem like science, technology, engineering, and math, and yet they are. The same design process goes into all these things. You think of something you want. You make a plan. You try it. You make something, and then you make it better. But all of these things would attract different kinds of kids to the process. You can make things that make your own life better, like a robot sound-activated stroller. You can make things that are just fun. Well, if it had sound, you would hear everyone cheering and clapping. It's just for fun, but you still had to think about the design of what you're doing. Maybe you're going to design something that makes your school a better place or makes the world a better place. And a lot of schools are using these UNESCO development goals to think about both what the world needs and what needs to happen literally in their backyard. I visited a school recently that's using these sustainable development goals to track populations of native fish, native versus non-native. And then what do? They figure out ways to get rid of the non-native fish. It's more than research. It's actionable things that students can do today, not just learn about, but do today. This is a Braille printer that was made out of a Lego kit. The inventor saw that Braille printers cost about $2,000. He thought, I could probably make one out of Lego. He did. So for $600, you can now have a copy of his plans, and you probably guessed it, the inventor was 12 years old. And I went to his Facebook page when I heard about this, and I copied this from his Facebook page, and he said, I was going to make an app or maybe a Minecraft cheat sheet, but why not help a fellow human being? I mean, kids think like that. They want to be the one who changes the world. And we can give them the tools to do it. And his parents were advised to patent the idea. And he said, no, that's not how the world works now. I'm going to put these plans online, and someone else is going to make them better. Kids know the world is interested in their ideas. We have to make sure that school understands that same thing, or else school becomes irrelevant. It becomes a place where ideas don't go that matter. The whole world is waiting for ideas, and they don't know if the inventor is 10 or 20 or 50 or 100. And really, it doesn't matter. And you may have noticed that I'm using technology in a lot of these examples. Do I think that technology is the only way that design happens in schools? No, I don't. However, I think that it's a step that really leverages what's powerful and what's available. And Seymour Papert, who's the father of educational technology, said, if you can use technology to make things, you can make a lot more interesting things. And you can learn a lot more by making them. So design plus technology, here's the list. You can do a lot more. You can make real things that work. You can make things you care about. You can make things more precisely than ever before. And you can learn more by making them. So what's not to love about this? This sounds awesome. Why aren't all students doing this? Well, design projects can be complicated. They don't always work as planned. They can take time. Sometimes they can take a lot of time. And schools kind of hate all of that. The uncertainty, not knowing how things are actually going to unfold when you've got a timetable and you've got to be done by Thursday and there's a test on Friday and something new starts on Monday. But just because something makes school feel uncomfortable doesn't mean it's a problem, right? We should not problematize a real design process and substitute a watered-down version sanitized for schools. We need to resist magic wands that promise that this will be easy and quick. Fake design challenges that guarantee success. Design should not be guaranteed successful. Resist canned procedures that over-constrain and over-prescribe. Because if you try and sand down those rough edges of the design process, at best, what you get is wishful thinking, that if you just try these things, you'll actually get something useful out of it. And at worst, it's a marketing scheme designed to separate schools from their money. As they hear about the new thing is maker spaces, let's buy a 3D printer, voila, we're in the 21st century. I guarantee you 3D printing will not change education. It's what the kids do with the 3D printer and how we think of the 3D printer in the learning ecosystem that will change education. Now, Dr. Mitra yesterday said that we should stop packing our students' suitcases full of facts from the 19th century. We should pack their suitcases full of questions. Well, I'm going to say yes and to that and say we should also pack their suitcases full of experiences. Experiences that give them the confidence and competence to tackle questions that we don't even know to ask yet. But they can tap into these successful things that they've done in school and say, yes, I was able to do that, so I can do this. And, you know, we could fill this room, and we don't have time. We could talk about all of the research, all of the famous quotes from people who've said that students learn as a consequence of experience, not as a consequence of being taught. But I really know I'm on the right track when I hear kids like Talon who said, everything's a lot more simple to make. I can do things really quickly now that I know how to look at stuff. That's a profoundly eloquent statement, that knowledge is a consequence of experience. It's also a statement that mindfulness grows in context. Kids are mindful about things they care about, right? I go to a lot of education conferences and people tell me all the time, oh, technology's so great. You kids love to click on things. It's so empowering. And I'm saying that's not what I'm saying. Kids are empowered by doing powerful things and sharing them with people that care about them and that they care about. And then having the opportunity to make those things matter in the world. And I think what Talon is saying is just that. He's being mindful about things that he cares about, and he's learned to connect his head, his heart, and his hands by doing things, doing real things. And I think the point is that we need to see students as agents of change, not objects of change, because the world sees them that way. The world sees people everywhere contributing and collaborating within the maker movement and in other movements to share problems and solutions and make things happen that are real in the world. And I also know that you can't have empowered students if you don't have empowered teachers. Teachers who have agency over their own classroom and curriculum and have the confidence themselves to help design these rich experiences for students. I am not saying that we all just take a step back and the students will magically learn all these things by themselves. But I think this is a very special time in history that we can seize as educators to create the mindset, create the tools and the experiences to help kids make sense of the world and to take charge of their world, because it is their world. And I can't think of a better organization than UNESCO to help drive this, or a group of educators like yourselves who have the future in your sights. So let's make it happen. Thanks very much. I will introduce the next speaker. Oliver, please come up.
Thank you, Sylvia. So I'm going to go on with this idea of design and let the student make in the classroom, focusing on a new building block in the digital era, which is the new building block is the algorithm. And somehow I haven't seen the word being pronounced so much during this conference, but this is really the building block of a lot of the technology we are talking about today. And so I'm talking about this because if we let the student make in the classroom, that means that they are going to play with algorithms also. And so they need to be educated on what is an algorithm. And also, first, they need to have access to the algorithm. So you probably know that more and more students know how to speak Java, Python, so all these languages for coding. And there are going to be more and more people like this. So that means that we need to adapt as educators to have an audience that is able to program and to use this language as globish, really. So you're going to make things with plastic and paper, wood, but you're also going to make things with algorithm. So so this is really exciting because students will have a new way to learn, but deep into the program, it's going to be adaptable and customized because the students are going to make their program themselves. The consequence for the companies or the people who are building digital tools is that this ultimately needs to be open access. So we need to have access to the code so that the students can play with it. If we want to push the maker movement all the way, they need to go all the way to the code. So the second thing I want to talk about is, so in this digital era, where we have students who are going to play or make things with algorithms, is this going to affect the content? Is technology going to affect the content of the course? And I'd just like to put a few words of caution on this, because yes, it's going to affect the content. So the first thing is that algorithms are not neutral. Algorithm, the code is a language, and the language is a vehicle of culture. So when you have a code, you also come with your, Western, for me, Western upbringing. There's also money involved, so all this is not neutral. And just taking one example, so this is classic machine learning tools, word embedding. So it's basically a system that surveys millions of texts and associate words one with the other. So you have an association like flower with pleasant and insect with unpleasant. And here already you see the problem, right? Because insect is key to the ecosystem. So you don't want the artificial intelligence to tell you that an insect is unpleasant. It's really a problem. And of course, there's even more examples that are even more closer to us. If you do the same artificial intelligence approach, woman is going to be associated with arts, humanities, and staying at home. And man is going to be associated with engineering, war, this kind of thing. So it's sexist, obviously. So we need to know, as educators, and we need to be aware that algorithms are not neutral, and they can even, artificial intelligence can be even racist or sexist. So I think it's important to know that. And of course, we need to eliminate the biases. That's the challenge. And actually, it's much harder to do than to design artificial intelligence, eliminate these biases. So we need to be aware of this, because if the students are going to make their own algorithms, they are going to face that problem. The second thing that might affect the content is the fact that algorithms are quick. They're quick, and this is what we like about algorithms and about code, is that we get the result very quickly. And this is why students can make things in the classroom in a very short time. So this is good. I can take an example that is outside of education, personalized medicine. We know today that artificial intelligence is curing back pain and predicting heart attack much better than a medical doctor. So artificial intelligence is surpassing the capacity of the human brain because it's making millions of correlations in a minute, and this we can't do simply. So this is great, but from the education point of view, and I'm really happy to join Sylvia on this can look as an easy fix. And from the education point of view, this is not good. There is a lot. Going fast is not necessarily good. You want to enjoy being slow. You want to fail. You want to learn from your failures. And if the algorithms are too quick, if someone is giving you a tool that is too efficient, you're going to miss on the education. You're just going to go to the end result. You're going to jump to the result without going through the process of understanding. So this is a word of caution. And maybe the last point, I hear you, is that a lot of the new technologies are based on big data, artificial intelligence, as I was saying, and these techniques or technologies are based on correlations. And correlations are not always causal. So if you want to have kids play with algorithms and make their own programs, I think it's really important that they also, in addition, make causal algorithms. So the classic way of programming where you actually instruct the machine to do A, then B, and you know all the links. And then in these networks of links, it's really like systems thinking. That's what you heard already today. If you know all the links, you know the causal chain of events, and so you can explain, and you go through the process of understanding. So I'm going to stop here. So that's my three take-home messages, I guess, is that for the algorithms to be an element to play in the classrooms, we need to have access. We need to be aware that algorithms are not neutral and that algorithms are quick and often based on correlations. So we need to go to the causal part. All right, thank you. And I'll give the hand to Mila from Illinois.
Hello, everyone. I've been thinking about what to focus on today in terms of giving an example of what it looks like to unlock learning and engage students. Early in my career, when I first started teaching, I had a master teacher, and the one thing she always said to me was that the end outcome is that children learn. But as a teacher, it is your responsibility to engage the students, to motivate the students, and to make sure that there's a level playing ground in the classroom. One of the things she said to me was many students come in and they don't have the same prior experience. So if they don't have the same prior experience, it makes learning more difficult. So when I think about design and that particular process, what I appreciate about it is that it gives the opportunity for all children to learn and not just some. So think about that again. It levels the playing ground so all children can learn together and not just some. So I'm going to give an example. My son goes to a STEAM academy and he absolutely loves it. When he comes home, he talks about what he had the opportunity to do, what he had the opportunity to touch, and what he experienced through sight and sound. So let me share a problem that happened that wouldn't be a problem here in India. They wanted to talk about caves, but there were no caves in drivable distance in Illinois. So here you all have the experience of Bora Caves, and I know some people took a tour. But they figured out, how can we get children to understand it if they can't experience it? So where the design came in, and we heard Sylvia mention earlier today, they didn't have the constraints of time. So the students were able to figure out what they would do, and their idea was that they would build their own cave. They had to think about the materials. What materials would work? What materials would not work? And it was up to 6 7, and 8-year-olds to do this together. What would it look like inside of a cave? What would it feel like? How would you enter the cave? And what about the design process? So they had to use computers. They had to think about what they needed to read about to understand not only how to create it, but to make sure we could feel it. So when that day came, my son told me that morning, and he looked at what I had on, and he said, "That is not going to work today. Please don't dress up. You're going to have to crawl." So when we came to the evening of the cave, as we entered the room, the children had designed a life-size cave out of cardboard, out of paper, out of pieces of plastic. And parents had to drop to their knees and crawl through cardboard boxes. I really don't know how I made it because it was on a concrete floor. But once I made it through the tunnel, you were able to stand up. And it was amazing. They had thought about everything from sight to sound to the touch and the feel of the walls and the lighting. And there were several places that we could crawl to actually experience a cave. But every time we came out, the children would greet us and they would explain to us what just happened, what we were feeling and what we were learning. And it was phenomenal. What I loved about this is that all of the students were engaged. There were no barriers. There were no students that couldn't understand because they didn't have a certain experience. These children worked together to make sure if one child didn't understand something, they taught them. The technology piece also came in because they had an opportunity, because again, how could they build what they haven't seen? Virtual reality, and I know there have been some sessions on that. The students were able to go to the University of Illinois and actually experience virtual reality. They put on headsets, and then they were able to feel and see the cave. So it takes a little time, and that's what we heard earlier. It may not fit in a 30-minute or a 40-minute lesson. But if you want to make it work, it's going to be longer than one day and one session. This lasted at least a week, and really longer when we looked at their design and prior planning. So we have to make sure that we have the space and the time. And then I'm going to talk about a concept called failing forward. It's okay to fail. So halfway through, they might have realized that they used the wrong material. Failing forward. They learned something as they took that next step. And that is the most important part of the learning process. It's not about a script. It's about the opportunity to roll up your sleeves, to make mistakes, to figure out what happened, and to think critically. My master teacher once said to me, "You know you've done a good job if you look across the classroom and the students have taken control of their own learning. And you hear laughter and excitement." And when I think about design and allowing students to own their own learning, that is what I think about. And now I think about the caves. Thank you. And next we'll have Gotham.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Check. Works. Hello. 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 All right. Sorry. I think a few points have already been covered about education, and I particularly want to talk about adult education. Covered the children's part, and we're all adults here. Most part, you two kids will be adults in a few years. So what I want to talk about is when we talk about design, design is supposed to solve a problem. And what is the problem that we're trying to solve? How should our education look in the 21st century? Right? We've had a lot of conversation how it should not look, and how it is outdated, but we don't know what is the solution for 21st century, right? And that makes me question the purpose of education. The purpose of education, to me, in my opinion, is to help us grow, learn skills and mindsets that help us create a successful and meaningful life for ourselves, whatever that might mean for us in the 21st century, in the information age. Now, does our education system, university system, support it? Not really. At least not for me. I grew up in India here, and just like every Indian good boy of my time, guess what did I study? There you go. Exactly. Growing up, we had 3 choices: to become a doctor, an engineer, or a family disappointment. And I picked up engineering, right? And it doesn't really serve the purpose. And what we say is, what is the alternative? The alternative is not, quit education. We idolize people who quit their education and then go out to do great things in the world. These are our Einstein, these are our Elon Musk, our Richard Bransons, our Mark Zuckerbergs. But if you notice closely, the smartest people of our time, they never quit their education. They simply escape the outdated education system. And that's what I want to just share. I have just 5 minutes, but I would love to answer a few more questions on it. I believe there are 3 elements of modern education. Number 1 is something that we already know: self-education. We live in the age of technology. Do we need to go to university, take someone out for 4 years, and put them with a bunch of 18, 19 years old? Did you know all the courses that MIT students, Harvard students take today? You can take the same classes for free right now, right? You can go on edX.org, access all those classes. You can go on Udemy and take anything from programming to photography. Turn your passions into your professions. You can do that. That's the first element, self-education. But that doesn't cut it. There are 2 more. Because a school doesn't provide proper self-education to us, the one that is customized to us, but the school and university does do one really good thing, which everybody would agree, is the friends that we make, are the level of social connections. Not with everyone, because most of them are weird, but few of them are close to us. No matter how old you are, you have that connection. And that's the second part, your tribe. Find your tribe. And it's not something new. We are social animals. We naturally seek connection with people who are like us, similar interests, similar pain points, similar value system. You guys are a tribe of people who want to change education in some shape or form. That's why you're together. This is the tribe. Find your tribe. And this is the environment where you share the latest practices. You learn from each other. You grow with each other together as a tribe. And that's the second element. And when you find your tribe, it leads you to the third part, which I call deep immersions. Deep immersions are places where you come together for a short period of time, 1 to 3 days. This conference is an example of deep immersion. Here's what happened in deep immersion. You come together as a tribe and go deep into a particular topic of interest. Make sense so far? And you go deep, you get a lot of inspiration, aha moments, create a lot of meaningful connections, have a lot of fun, and create lasting memories. And deep immersions are powerful because they reinforce your connection with your tribe. They reinforce that connection and gives you a lot of aha moments. Every single conference, if you guys have been to conferences, every single conference I come back from, what do I come back with? Come back with a list of books, online courses, podcasts that I want to listen to. These are the things I gain as an insight, as an aha moment from the conference. And what do I do with that? I add it back to my self-education. Right? I add it to the list of the things that I want to learn in my own time. So it's the self-education, your tribe, and deep immersion. And that becomes the wheel of modern education. And if that is the case, why would you ever want to end your education? It doesn't make sense. Why would you say education, learning should stop after 4 years of university? The idea is bizarre to me. Right? Your learning and education should never end. And the idea, what I want to propose, is to drive your own education. It doesn't matter if you're a 13-year-old or a 73-year-old. It's the same blueprint. It's the same template. We just live in the 21st century, so we have access to better technology, better platforms that can help facilitate these 3 elements. So thank you very much.
So, firstly, let's thank the panelists again, also for the fact that they really are on time. Okay, so we're going to open up now for questions. We really do have 25 minutes, and for anybody who missed my spiel at the beginning, I just want to remind you it's a question, not a statement. So you've got to ask your question, and you should be well prepared and planned it. So I'd like to ask the first question. I have my notes in front of me. My question is either to Sylvia or Oliver. If a person in the audience was thinking of implementing a design program in their school, what would you advise them as the first steps to undertake and to look at? Either person.
The first step, I guess, is to focus on the question, not to look for the tools or how to do it. Really think about the question. I mean, I'm a researcher, so a researcher, the first mission is to find a good question, and then how to address it is a second question. But I would say the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that asking the kids what they want to do, and trying to make real experiences out of their questions and their passions, are also your passions. I mean, kids can get inspired by teachers who have deep passions and things, and if you can kind of take children along on a journey where you're all learning together, I think that's a very powerful experience.
Thank you. Lady in the front.
Hi, thank you. That was wonderful. My name is Ariam, and my question is more for Sylvia. So most teachers have learned and been trained to sort of deliver content and to cultivate these sort of rich learning environments that you described. I think teachers have to see themselves as learning designers. So what does that look like as far as professional development? How do we transition teachers from delivering content to owning the fact that they are learning experience designers?
I think that's a really good question, because I truly believe that you don't understand something you've never seen and never experienced yourself. I know when Gary Steger and I run institutes all over the world, we always start with what we're doing. So we do things, and the teachers do things. And then when you have an experience, you can talk about that experience and say, would this work in my classroom? If it wouldn't, why not? What can I change? Is something blocking me? Do I need to change the experience? There's learning design, but it follows the same principles as the design you hope your students are doing. And if you do something with kids, try it again. I mean, this idea of iteration is good for teachers too. And that's a leadership question, right? If you have to feel safe that someone's not going to come and say, you failed, why are you doing that? Go back to the old way. The leadership has to be able to encourage teachers to do iterative learning design.
And I was going to say, I mean, she mentioned one of the pieces, but I think it also starts with the school leadership. And there's a concept of teachers in school systems feel comfortable and confident if they know that there is the support within the building. I think the other piece is having an opportunity, if you've never done it before, to actually shadow other classrooms. So, with the example I shared today, it was just fantastic to see that there were student teachers that were also able to experience and understand, and then they can see how much fun it is for students as well.
Question, maybe from this side? This one over here. And if someone in the middle would like to put up this. And there's one down the back as well.
Hi, my name is Kamini. My question is for Mr. Gautam. You just mentioned about having the experience of, maybe not go to college, maybe, get all that self-access learning, into your day's plan, whatever. Having said that, today when people apply for schools overseas, jobs here, people want qualification. People want to see certificates. They value your experience, but they also want to see proof that you've, so what are your thoughts about that?
Thank you for asking me that question. Amazing question. The thing is, what we are trying to, first thing that we need to recognize, our environment that we live in, the belief system of the environment that we live in can be extremely powerful or can be extremely disempowering. So the system that we are dealing with, it's a system more than 100 years old, accepted by roughly 7 billion people all over the world. So that shift is not going to happen immediately. I recognize that. Having said that, the reason why it's not happening is because, we're not having enough conversations like these on a global scale. What we talk about, yes, it's outdated, but what's the alternative? We don't talk about it. And some of the most progressive companies are taking it forward. 15% of the staff in Google, one of the best companies that happens to hire a lot of engineers, 15% of their staff doesn't have a college degree, right? Why? And more than the company that I work for, also the same. The company that I run, also the same. So we are recognizing it. But the fact is we need to have that conversation more, right? That's the first key. Second is, yes, if you want to go the traditional path, we can. But most people, does everyone have their smartphone? Just to tell you how bad the university situation is. Take out your smartphone, go on Google and type in, university makes me. And let Google tell you the top 4 answers. The first answer, anxious, depressed, feel like a failure, stupid. Top 4 answers by Google. Millions of people are feeling this way. They are just unlucky to not be in this room and hear this from someone, right? What we tell them is, no, you're not part of the system. You're off. You're not meant for success. You're supposed to be cornered down, and good luck to you. Oh my God, I'm not going to marry my daughter to this guy or whatever. This is such a big problem. All we need to do is have more conversations like this, so more people can get empowered, especially the ones who feel really stuck in the situation, so that they understand there are alternatives, right? That's the first step. And it will take a few steps and not immediately. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Down the back there?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lydia here. My question is, in India, we do recognize teachers as, a person who has a bachelor in education, that is B.Ed. It's very important for you to become a teacher. But here, with design thinking coming into existence, I don't think, B.Ed or anything else would work out. Is there a chance for teachers to be trained in such a manner to equip the coming 21st century students? That's my question.
Yes, I think there are. I think there are ways to learn things online, professional development that you can go to. I would favor things where you actually do the thing you're trying to learn. So you're walking the talk. If you want to take this back to the classroom as an active learning experience, take an active learning experience yourself. And it may feel uncomfortable at first, because we're all trained to sort of sit and listen to people tell us what to do. I think there's a number of there's not just one way. I think that things that interest you are things that you should pursue. If design thinking speaks to you, if fabrication speaks to you, go deeply into those things. You don't have to take a course in 7 different ways to do design. Design something. Bring that back to your school. Do that. Do it fast. Don't wait for the perfect moment. There will never be a perfect moment. And the only evidence of success is going to happen if you try something and then fix it. I think a lot of teachers live in this, what you described, I would call like this someday Monday moment. You have to have 2 feet in 2 camps. You realize that the education system isn't perfect, and yet the kids show up anyway, right? So you have to do something on Monday that pushes you towards someday. And reconciling those sort of 2 areas that might feel like they're in conflict is the job that we're all trying to struggle and do.
So, Mila?
Yes, I was just going to add one other thing that I was just thinking about. I also work very closely with the International Society for Technology and Education, and what has proven to be very helpful for educators and administrators as well are professional learning communities. And these are also ways in which you can connect with other folks doing the same thing you're doing to learn about what it looks like and to get examples. And in fact, I do know at this conference, the president of the ISTE Global Professional Learning Community is also here. So it's be a great way to connect. So if you'd like to get connected with her, I can definitely do that.
Gotham?
Most of my points covered. So perfect. Did you see the connection? Self-education. There are online courses you can learn everywhere you want. That's a very progressive thought as a teacher. And unfortunately, the situation of teachers is horrible all over the world. Right? It's one of the most important jobs in the world, and it should be highest paid, should be most recognized, and it's not all of those things. Not going to talk about it. There's online courses. There are things you can go to and learn the things that you want. She mentioned community, right? Yeah. Find your tribe. There are communities you can go online and search. She just gave you an opening there. They have their conferences, conventions. Go deep, have those deep immersions and bring those things back to your university. Drive your education in how to become a better teacher, whatever that might be.
I do understand that, but I just wanted to know, is there a recognition to that? So, okay, if you train in certain things, you are recognized as a teacher of the 21st century. That's my question.
Okay, so I don't think there will be a standardization in anything. There cannot be, because we don't live in the age of standardization. Oh, right. We live in the age of customization. We live in the information. How could you standardize something when like the information is changing so fast? Peter Diamandis, the founder of XPRIZE Foundation, the guy, SpaceX, Singularity University, he said between 2016 and 2022, there will be as many technological changes as we had between 1900s and 2000. That's more than 2,000% growth. And we are at the beginning of the exponential curve. We can't standardize things. If we do, not for that long, because things will constantly change. That's why we need constant education, because this is the world that we live in.
Oliver, do you want to add?
Maybe just one word.
Go, yes.
On the evaluation, I think we're living a revolution, like a digital revolution, and you see it in every sector. Where if you talk about evaluation, it used to be top-down. Institution would evaluate the bottom, and now it's bottom-up. If you take the taxi business, it used to be a license from the state, and the taxi could drive. Now it's Uber, and it's evaluated by the customer, so it's much more horizontal. And so this is likely to happen also in education. It's going to come from the base. And so, I mean, I would not be worried, because this is going to happen anyway.
Okay, so just before your question, let's do a health check in the audience. Hands up those that are teachers, educators. So fair few. Practicing at the moment? Fair few. My question to you is, how are you feeling about this at the moment? How are you feeling about design? Are you anxious about design? Is it going to be another thing that you have to teach? Because I look in some eyes and I think that I'm seeing this. And I would think the same. I'm a retired educator. But basically, there's all this being added on. So I'm going to slip in another question. Would you like to make a comment about that anxiety that teachers have?
I can start because I'm not a teacher. But so I can just speak for myself. So we, with Julie Legal, who is maybe somewhere in the audience, so we have a project like this where we do project-based learning. And I think as a teacher, it can be a lot of fun. You ask a question, or you ask the student to ask a question, so you don't even ask a question, at the beginning of the year, and then we wait till the end of the year and they come up with a project. So it's completely unsupervised, it doesn't take more time, but actually it makes, the students are making things themselves, they look for funders, they do their business plan and everything, they do everything themselves alone, and this is really fun. And for the teacher, it's not additional work.
Thank you so very much.
I completely agree with what you're saying, because the tendency for school is to decontextualize things. We'll spend 5 minutes on design. We'll spend 5 minutes on mindfulness. We'll spend 5 minutes on STEM. We'll spend, and then after STEM, we'll do science. And it's like, what are you talking about? All of these things, I don't see design as another skill. I see it like I started my presentation. Design is a way of knowing. Design is a way of learning. The design principles need to be integrated into classes. In the United States, they just introduced a new science standard called the Next Generation Science Standards. And what they did that's so revolutionary is they elevated engineering design practices to the same level as scientific inquiry. Now, that's caused a lot of questions for teachers because teachers don't know what the engineering design process is and how that fits into science class, because it's not the same as the scientific method. The design is a process of invention. The scientific method is a process of testing. So you have to rethink what you're doing in science. We have to drop some of the subjects we're teaching. We have to be cruel. We have to get out big knives and say, we don't need this anymore. And I don't know if that's going to happen at the school level or individuals or governments. It's going to be different for every country, every city, every school board. But we have to get rid of this idea that everything could be atomized down to a 5-minute lesson. Design has to be integrated. It can't be another thing, or it's a waste of time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Biju Baby. I'm the principal of an international school here in Visakhapatnam. I've been hearing very anxiously all this, what you are discussing. My question is to do with, there's already a template in place as far as education is concerned. We spoke about timetabling, we spoke about all the subjects we do, and so on, and then you are here trying to bring in a change that is teachers to become designers, teachers bringing in that innovative culture within the class. How, as a principal, I could start in small ways bringing in that innovative culture in my school?
Thank you. That's a really...
That too, remembering that it's in this template which we are talking about.
Okay. I would say, in a case like that, and thanks for giving the context there, maybe starting small, identifying, teachers in the school that are open to the concept and excited about the concept, and rather than rolling it out school-wide, maybe just starting with 1 or 2 classrooms and allowing them to pair up. And then you're looking within your existing template to think about ways in which to basically chunk the design activities so it can still kind of fit in the pieces. But I think the perfect part is that the hardest part is the administrative support. And it's just great to hear that you are supportive of it and thinking of new ways to incorporate it. So I would just say chunk it and start small.
Would anybody else like to comment too? Okay, Beauty. Lady here, please.
Hi. So I want to understand how resource intensive this entire process is and how do you scale? See, in India, one of the largest challenges is that the teacher-student ratios are really large. And we have very, very under-resourced schools. So in such an environment and context, how does this pan out? How do you implement something like this?
I can say a quick word. A lot of these projects, at least for myself, for the Lyon part, a lot of these projects, project-based learning, is self-organized. So that takes absolutely 0 hour. Of course not. You have to prepare the thing, but after that, the students are doing their project alone, and that's the whole point, that they learn from themselves, with themselves, a little bit like what Sudhita was talking about. So it's not taking so much time.
Anyone else, Sylvia?
I think some of the time has to be recaptured from practices that aren't working. So, if we're lecturing a lot, can we lecture less? Can we give the students something small to do where they're learning the concept, and then we can reinforce what they're learning with a small lecture, with a 5-minute lecture instead of an hour lecture to start? How do we recapture that time? The schools I see tackling this don't do everything at once. It's overwhelming to try and change everything. They pick one thing. Maybe they pick something they're already good at. What's your school already doing that feels collaborative, that feels new, that uses technology? For some schools, that's the art department. For some schools, it might be the drama department or the way that the school interacts with the community. And take that success and say, how can we build on that? How can we put students in charge? How can we add science to the dramatic things that the students are doing? How can we use a 3D printer in the art class so that the art students are now using the coordinate system, and all of a sudden they're going to turn around and go, hey, this was the geometry I thought I hated. So I think that building on success and building from what schools already do well is better than saying school sucks, school is awful, we have to redesign everything. That's overwhelming.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more questions. There's one there, and there's one behind in the next row.
Hi, I'm Neha. So you all spoke about design thinking, and I think a lot of it is based on self-directed learning and taking charge of your own learning. But in a system which has been going on for so long, which sort of quashes your natural curiosity, are there some things we need to start with before so that kids are able to take on to these kinds of processes in a more hands-on way? So the whole idea of critical thinking or asking questions, which has been curbed in our education system, what do we need to do so that they engage more effectively with these kinds of processes?
You know, one that I was thinking about, and great question, is the empathy piece. So, you know, just the work I've been doing and following the Sustainable Development Goals, if you could connect with students and allow them to identify, you know, what they see as a problem or something that they see that could be changed for innovation, it automatically draws them in. I participated in a research study some years ago, and I simply threw out an opportunity for students to identify books that they wanted to put in a library. If there was an empty library and you had to write letters and convince the principal to purchase your book, what would you do? So I found that just giving students that opportunity to engage around a topic that's important to them, they're going to be so excited. I think that's honestly the easier part.
Very quickly, I haven't studied this subject as long as I've studied adult education, but another model to study for younger kids is the Montessori education model. It's a new and upcoming model. It puts the focus and the empathy on the student. The show is not happening in front and children are sitting because that's not their natural instinct. They put together like people from like 3 to 5 years together. So like a third grader will sit with all the way until the sixth grader, and the sixth graders will be responsible to teach them, and there'll be a lot of collaborative effort. There's a lot of focus on seeking more knowledge and being more curious rather than taking curiosity away from the kids. So it's a very interesting model to study. So if you are interested, I think that would be a direction that I would point you at. To start with.
I think it's also very interesting that the Montessori model has been around for a long time and lives through change after change and still appears. We've got time for one more question. There's the microphone.
All right, my name is Peter, and I want to ask, how possible is it to implement design in education where children come from different socio-economic backgrounds?
What age are you referring to, just so that I get the context? It would be different. If they're really small, it doesn't matter to me.
Let's say diverse ages, like 20, in college level and high school level.
So by that time, they kind of have an idea of like their interest, like the things that they're good at. So the idea is to not, by this time, they should be directing their own learning. That's my principle, and that's what I would recommend. So when a child, if let's say an 18-year-old, is interested in a current education system in a university in India, who's most likely an engineer, and let's say he's interested in programming, what I would do, if I was that person for some reason, what I would do is I would go online, I would find people who are interested in programming, maybe who are doing hackathons or things like those, environments that are bringing together people with the similar desire to learn, similar interests, similar pain points. So that brings people from all different backgrounds. So background is not that important. Actually makes it even better, because what they end up also learning is cultural sensitivity, better communication. These are the things that actually matter to get you more successful in the world. There are studies on that. That the most of the professional, 85% of the professional success is dependent on our skills in human engineering, ability to lead, communicate, negotiate. Only 15%, this is a Carnegie Institute of Technology study, only 15% is dependent on the professional skills. So when you are in a multicultural environment, it's actually even better, because you learn better to communicate, learn better to negotiate across cultures. And we are turning into a globally connected world. So the better we get at it, the more successful we get professionally.
Okay.
Can I just chime really quick? I think that, one of the things that happens in the United States is that we tell ourselves that kids who are deprived in early life need basics. We constantly say, well, we have to give these kids basics so that they can come up to speed. But kids who are richer don't have to go through that. I think that's completely backwards. I think what a lot of kids who are poor need most is experiences. Their life is deprived of rich experiences where they can be experts at something. And we do exactly the wrong thing by constantly telling them they have to learn the vowel sounds instead of playing. And I think that all kids need experience, and kids who are socially economic, poor, need them even more.
Okay, so to finish, before everybody makes this run out, can I conclude by saying, firstly, thank you as an audience. I think that you've been absolutely fantastic, and I think you should give yourself a clap. Secondly, I'd like to recognise the panel, so to Sylvia and to Mila and to Oliver and to Gotham. Thank you very much for the way that you've been open, the way that you've spoken, you've shared your expertise, and you really have engaged us in your thinking. So please thank them. And as life is a learning experience, I think the one thing that I have learnt today, and it's only a very small thing, let's again recognise their gifts by applauding as Sugutra would like us to. Thank you all very much.